Okay, listen. The four horsemen of the apocalypse aren't real. There's no day coming where you or your future grandchildren are going to see four distinct beings riding on horses decimating humanity. When the author of the book of Revelation, which is where these equestrian riders get their fame, when he wrote about those horses, he wasn't warning his readers of something that was coming, and he wasn't warning you either. So what was he doing then? I mean, who or what are these four horsemen of the apocalypse? That's what we're going to get into in this video. But first, hi, my name's Corey, and I'm the pastor of RedeemerOnline.church, and it's my mission to help you understand and practice the Christian faith, especially if you don't go to church. And every video we do on this channel is designed to do that. So if that's something you're interested in, hit subscribe. And if you want to dig a little deeper into the faith with us, join the email list. You can click the link in the description. And if you want personalized help, customized for your life, stick around to the end of the video because I have something that I want to offer to you. Back to the question. If these four horsemen weren't a prediction of the future, who were they and what does it have to do with understanding and practicing the Christian faith? First, let's talk about who they were. And in order to understand who they were, you got to know the context. The four horsemen are characters in a vision. The author of the book of Revelation, John, had this vision of God in the heavenly throne room, surrounded by these four strange creatures, handing a scroll to a lamb that was looking like it was slain. This is a representation of Jesus. And that scroll contained God's plan from the beginning of time through the present and all the way into the future. Everything that has happened, is happening, and will happen. And it was sealed with these seven seals. And as the lamb cracks each of the seals, characters start to emerge from the scroll. I watched as the lamb opened the first of the seven seals. Then I heard one of the four living creatures say in a voice like thunder, "Come." I looked, and there before me was a white horse. Its rider held a bow, and he was given a crown, and he rode out as a conqueror bent on conquest. The first rider represents the evil addiction to conquest within humanity. Throughout history, human beings have been on this journey to conquer and subjugate others. As a species, we have quite the checkered past when it comes to encountering people who are not like us. We either seek to eliminate or force into servitude. And that servitude and subjugation has taken a lot of different forms throughout history, but it always results in an attempt to conquer and conform people to the way of life of the conqueror. From the expansion of ancient empires to the dominance of corporate monopolies, there's something sinister within the human heart that bends toward dominant sameness rather than creative pluralities. That's what this first horseman is a representation of, that sinister drive or ambition to conquer and subjugate others. When the lamb opened the second seal, I heard the second living creature say, "Come." And then another horse came out, a fiery red one. Its rider was given power to take peace from the earth and to make people kill each other. To him was given a large sword. The second horseman is a representation of humanity's proclivity for violence. History is stained with the blood caused by this horseman, but it's not just about violence. It's about what leads to that violence. It's really about the anger and rage that boils under the surface in the human heart. And I think there are at least two ways to look at this. One, I had a wise mentor tell me this once, that anger and rage are emotional reactions to sadness, that in some way they're ill-expressed sadness. They come as a result of not mourning or grieving, not taking the time to process our losses. Instead, we lash out in anger or we leak out our rage. Another way to think of it comes from a friend of mine who had done his PhD work in early childhood psychological development. He said that one of the first emotions that kids experience is anger. Anger that they don't have or aren't getting what they want. Now, either way you look at this, whether you look at it as childlike, stunted, or emotional immaturity, or the result of not properly grieving things that make us sad, anger and rage have fueled humanity's violent nature throughout history, and this second horseman is just a visual representation of that evil. When the lamb opened the third seal, I heard the living creature say, "Come." I looked, and there before me was a black horse. Its rider was holding a pair of scales in his hand. Then I heard what sounded like a voice among the four living creatures saying, 2 pounds of wheat for a day's wage, and 6 pounds of barley for a day's wage, and do not damage the oil and the wine. This third horseman represents economic evil. 2 pounds of wheat and 6 pounds of barley for a day's wage is poverty level living in those days. But the command to not damage the oil and wine is a command to save the more luxurious parts of life, barely able to get by on necessities while craving and chasing that which doesn't ultimately satisfy. This is the economic reality that's not only sucked the life out of people so that they can't flourish, but it's also caused tremendous division between the haves and the have-nots of society. It's the evil of a consumption that doesn't lead to flourishing, filling up and somehow starving at the same time. This horse is representing economic evil, but it's not hard to see how that mentality can apply to other parts of your life, not just the relationship between your table and your bank account. When the Lamb opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth living creature say, "Come." I looked, and there before me was a pale horse. The word here for pale actually refers to a more yellowish green color. Its rider's name was Death, and Hades was following close behind him. They were given the power over a fourth of the earth to kill by sword, famine, and plague, and by the wild beasts of the earth. I think it'd be fair to sum up the evil we're talking about here as more natural forms of evil, death by plague or disease or disaster. They're not necessarily at the direct hands of other human beings, but they're still suffered directly by human beings. Now, here's what's important to point out. John doesn't write these things down because he thinks his readers should be watching out their windows to look for these four horsemen riding down the street looking for victims. They're not real. They're not apocalyptic predictions. They don't communicate an order to the apocalypse as though conquest is going to show up first, and then wars and violence, and then economic hardship, and finally death by natural disaster, or so on. And so if he's not doing that, then what is John saying here? Well, when you get sick, in order to address not just your symptoms, but actually overcome an illness altogether, you have to be willing to examine the root of the problem in stark daylight if you ever expect to experience the remedy. Since this scroll lays out God's entire plan from beginning to end, since it contains everything that has happened, is happening, and will happen, including the ultimate remedy, in order to get there, we have to give an honest look at evil and its impact on the world. That's what John is seeing. And his first readers would have found it cathartic and encouraging. They weren't waiting for the day when those riders would be coming. They were already living it. They're already experiencing these four horsemen. John's vision says, hey, these things are part of the grand story. They're part of the scroll. They're part of the story that's unfolding. And at some point, they'll be overcome. They're not pointless. They're not meaningless. They're not random. They're plot themes. Now, what does that mean for you, for how you understand and practice the Christian faith? Well, a couple examples. For starters, COVID wasn't the pale horse, because the pale horse isn't real. It's a representation of the evil suffering unleashed on earth. So in another sense, COVID was the pale horse. The American economy isn't the black horse, because the black horse isn't real, but our indulgent consumption-based culture where we gorge ourselves on luxury, leaving us too little for the essentials for flourishing. In some sense, that is the black horse of our day. The point for us is that these aren't specifically real apocalyptic characters whose appearance signals the end of days. They're representations of evil within each one of us and within our world. They're a cold, honest look at what we face. But what about you? What do you think? How have you seen these themes play out in history? How have you seen these things at work in your own life? Let me know in the comments. Or if you've got a different interpretation of the four horsemen, share that too. I'd love to hear it. And speaking of your life, one of the dimensions of Redeemer Online and my work as a pastor is what I would call one-on-one spiritual coaching. This is a free service where we sit down via video to talk through how you can have more clarity and direction when it comes to understanding and practicing the Christian faith in your life, personalized, customized to fit you. It's completely free, but that also means that spots are going to be limited. It's just one more way that I want to help you understand and practice the Christian faith, especially if you don't go to church. So if that's something you're interested in, then throw a wave emoji in the comments and I'll give you a link so that we can get started. That's it for this one. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.